I am 85 years old. 23 years ago, a drunk driver ran a red light and killed my son. 3 years ago, I visited that man in prison and told him I forgave him. My name is Eleanor. I am sitting in the same chair where I used to wait for my boy to come home from school, from work, from dates with girls whose names I still remember. I am sitting in the house where I raised him, where I loved him, where I learned that some kinds of pain can either destroy you or transform you. Before I am gone, I need to tell you what forgiveness really is, what it costs, what it gives back, and why the hardest thing I ever did was also the thing that saved my life. You think forgiveness is about being nice. You think it is about letting people off the hook, about pretending that terrible things did not happen, about being weak instead of strong. You are wrong. Let me tell you about my son David, born March 15th, 1978. 8 pounds, 4 ounces of perfect possibility, red hair like his father, stubborn chin like me, and a laugh that could fill up a room and make strangers smile just hearing it. David was not perfect. No child is. He left his socks on the floor and forgot to call when he was running late. He played his music too loud and thought he knew everything about everything when he turned 16, but he was kind. Truly kind. He helped elderly neighbors with their groceries. He volunteered at the animal shelter on weekends. He had plans. David wanted to be a teacher. Elementary school kids, he said, because they still thought learning was an adventure instead of a chore. He was 24 years old, 2 months away from finishing his teaching degree, when James Morrison decided to get behind the wheel after drinking 8 beers and 2 shots of whiskey. It was a Tuesday night in October 2001. David was driving home from a study group, probably thinking about the lesson plan he had to present the next day, maybe wondering if he should ask out the girl from his education psychology class. James Morrison ran a red light going 65 miles per hour in a 35 zone. He hit David's car so hard it spun 3 times before slamming into a telephone pole. David died instantly. James Morrison walked away with a bruised rib and a blood alcohol level twice the legal limit. The police officer who came to my door at 1:47 in the morning was young, probably close to David's age. He stood on my porch in the rain, hat in his hands, and told me my son was dead. Just like that. 24 years of loving someone, of raising him and worrying about him and being proud of him, ended with a stranger on my doorstep saying, "I'm sorry for your loss." I did not believe him at first. I told him he had the wrong house, the wrong family, the wrong David. My David was careful. My David was responsible. My David wore his seatbelt and never drove too fast and always called if he was going to be late. There had been a mistake. But there was no mistake. My boy was gone. Killed by a man who chose to drink and drive, who chose to risk other people's lives for his own convenience, who chose selfishness over responsibility and ended my son's future in a split second of twisted metal and broken glass. The funeral was standing room only. David's college friends, his professors, kids from the animal shelter, neighbors who remembered the polite boy who shoveled their driveways without being asked. They all came to say goodbye to someone who would never get to become the man he was meant to be. I sat in the front row listening to people talk about my son's potential, his kindness, his plans, and all I could think about was James Morrison. All I could think about was the man who took this away from all of us, who stole David's future and my future, and the future of every child David would have taught. The trial lasted 6 months. I attended every day, sat in the same seat in the back row and watched lawyers argue about blood alcohol levels and brake marks and whether James Morrison showed sufficient remorse for destroying my family. James Morrison was 28 years old, married, 2 small children. He cried during his testimony, said he was sorry, that he thought about David every day, that he would give anything to take back that night. I wanted to hate him. I tried to hate him. I needed to hate him because hate felt like loyalty to David. If I stopped hating the man who killed my son, what did that say about how much I loved my boy? James Morrison was sentenced to 8 years in prison for vehicular manslaughter, 8 years for 24 years of David's life, 8 years for all the children he would never teach, all the laughter that died with him, all the love he would never get to give. It did not feel like enough. No sentence would have felt like enough. No punishment could balance the scales or bring back what was lost or make sense of why bad choices by strangers can end the lives of good people who did nothing wrong. I thought the trial would give me closure. I thought seeing James Morrison sentenced would make me feel better, would give me some sense of justice or completion. But driving home from the courthouse after his sentencing, I felt exactly the same. Empty, angry, broken. The hate was eating me alive. Not him, me. James Morrison was in prison, but I was the one living in a cell made of rage and grief and the endless replay of what if and if only and why my son. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating regular meals, stopped answering the phone when friends called to check on me. I sat in David's room for hours, touching his things, reading his books, imagining conversations with him about everything he was missing. The house became a shrine to grief. David's bed made exactly as he left it, his clothes still in the hamper, his coffee mug still in the sink. I was preserving everything except my own life. 2 years passed like this. 2 years of existing instead of living, of breathing, but not really being alive. Friends stopped calling. Family stopped visiting. I had become too heavy for people to carry, too broken for them to fix. My sister Carol finally confronted me. She came over one afternoon, took one look at me sitting in David's room holding one of his old textbooks, and said, "Ellie, you are dying. You are choosing to die, and David would be heartbroken to see what you are doing to yourself in his name." She was right. I was dying. I was choosing death over life, hate over healing, the past over any possibility of a future. And I was doing it because I thought it honored David's memory. I thought suffering was love, that moving forward was betrayal, that healing meant forgetting. But David would not have wanted this. David, who helped strangers and volunteered with animals and planned to teach children, would not have wanted his death to destroy his mother's life. He would have wanted me to find a way to keep living, to find meaning, to somehow transform this tragedy into something that honored his memory instead of being consumed by it. That is when I started thinking about forgiveness. Not because I wanted to let James Morrison off the hook, but because I wanted to get myself off the hook of hating him for the rest of my life. I started reading about forgiveness, books, articles, stories of other parents who had lost children to drunk drivers or violence or senseless accidents. I learned that forgiveness is not about the person who hurt you. Forgiveness is about freeing yourself from the prison of perpetual anger. Forgiveness does not mean what they did was okay. It does not mean they should not face consequences. It does not mean you have to have a relationship with them or trust them or pretend the harm never happened. Forgiveness means you choose to stop letting their actions control your life. You choose to stop giving them power over your peace, your future, your ability to find meaning and joy again. It took me 3 years to get ready. 3 years of therapy, of grief counseling, of slowly learning to separate loving David from hating James Morrison. 3 years of understanding that I could honor my son's memory through healing rather than through endless suffering. I wrote James Morrison a letter, told him I had something to say to him, that I wanted to visit him in prison. His lawyer called me, worried that I was planning some kind of confrontation or revenge, but I was not planning revenge. I was planning freedom. The prison was everything you would expect. Gray walls, metal detectors, guards, the smell of disinfectant trying to cover up despair. I sat across from James Morrison in a small room with a table between us and a guard in the corner. He had aged. 5 years in prison had made him thinner, grayer, older than his 33 years. He looked at me with fear and shame, and something that might have been relief that I had finally come. I told him about David. Really told him. Not just that he was my son who died, but who he was as a person. His dreams of teaching, his volunteer work, his terrible taste in music, and his habit of leaving dishes in the sink. His plans for the future that would never happen. James Morrison cried, deep body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere he had kept locked away since the night he killed my boy. He said David's name. He said he was sorry. He said he thought about him every day, that he saw David's face every time he closed his eyes. And then I said the words I had come there to say, the words that had taken me 5 years to find. James, I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I need to be free from hating you. I forgive you so I can get my life back, so I can honor David's memory by living instead of by dying slowly from anger. James Morrison looked at me like I had performed a miracle. But I had not performed a miracle for him. I had performed one for myself. Forgiving James Morrison did not bring David back. It did not make the loss hurt less. It did not change the fact that my son died because of someone else's selfish choice. But it did something else. It gave me my life back. I could sleep again. I could eat without food tasting like cardboard. I could look at pictures of David and smile instead of only crying. I could remember his laughter instead of only hearing the sound of sirens and breaking glass. I started volunteering with Mothers Against Drunk Driving, not to get revenge on people like James Morrison, but to help prevent other mothers from losing their children the way I lost mine. I started speaking at high schools about the consequences of drunk driving. I told them about David, about his dreams, about how one person's bad choice ended everything he was and everything he could have been. I also started visiting James Morrison regularly. Not because we became friends, but because forgiveness is not a one-time event. It is a choice you have to keep making, a practice you have to keep doing, a freedom you have to keep claiming. James Morrison got out of prison after serving 6 years. He found me at David's grave on the anniversary of the accident. He comes every year now. We stand together at my son's headstone, and he tells David he is sorry. He tells him about the drunk driving awareness programs he speaks at now, about the people he has talked out of getting behind the wheel when they have been drinking. James Morrison will never stop being the man who killed my son. I will never stop being the mother who lost her child because of his choices. But we have both found a way to make something meaningful out of something senseless. Some people think I am weak for forgiving him. They think I should hate him forever, that forgiveness somehow dishonors David's memory or lets James off easy. They do not understand that forgiveness is not about him. It is about me choosing life over death, healing over hatred, meaning over madness. Some people think forgiveness means I have forgotten David or moved on or gotten over losing him. They are wrong. You do not get over losing a child. You do not move on from that kind of love. But you can choose to move forward with it. You can choose to let that love transform you instead of destroy you. David has been gone for 23 years. I have lived more years without him now than I lived with him, but he is still my son. He is still the boy with red hair and a stubborn chin and a laugh that could fill up rooms. He is still the young man who wanted to teach children and help animals and make the world a little better than he found it. And that young man, that beautiful boy who was taken too soon by another person's terrible choice, he would not want his mother to spend her remaining years consumed by hatred. He would want me to live, to love, to find ways to honor his memory that do not require me to sacrifice my own life on the altar of justified anger. Forgiveness is not about being nice to people who hurt you. Forgiveness is about refusing to let people who hurt you have power over your future. It is about choosing freedom over prison, even when the prison is made of completely justified rage. I am 85 years old now. I have maybe 5 more years, maybe 10 if I am lucky. I will not spend those years hating James Morrison. I will spend them remembering David, telling his story, helping other people understand that one moment of selfishness can end decades of love. But I will also spend them living, gardening, reading books, watching sunsets, talking to friends, finding small joys in ordinary days, living the life that David would want me to live, not the death that grief tried to convince me I deserved. If someone has hurt you, if someone has taken something precious from you, if someone has caused you pain that feels too big to survive, I understand the desire for revenge. I understand the need to hate. I understand thinking that forgiveness means letting them win. But hate is a prison where you are both the prisoner and the guard. Forgiveness is the key that unlocks the cell, not for them, for you. You do not forgive because they deserve it. You forgive because you deserve to be free. You do not forgive to help them heal. You forgive to help yourself heal. You do not forgive because it changes the past. You forgive because it can change your future. It may take years. It took me 5. It may take therapy and prayer and more strength than you think you have. It may be the hardest thing you ever do, but it may also be the thing that saves your life. Some pain is too big to carry forever. Some hatred is too heavy to hold for a lifetime. Some anger is too toxic to let poison every remaining day you have on this earth. David is gone. James Morrison's choices took him away from me, and I will never get him back. But I chose not to let James Morrison's choices take me away, too. I chose not to let the man who killed my son also kill my ability to find meaning and peace and even joy in the time I have left. That choice, that forgiveness, that freedom, it is the last gift I could give my son. To live well in his honor instead of dying slowly in his name. I am tired now, but it is a good tired. A tired that comes from living instead of from carrying hate. A tired that comes from choosing love over revenge, healing over hatred, life over the slow death of perpetual anger. Go forgive someone, not for them, for you, because you deserve to be free.